Welcome back to Realistic Progression 1, and it's time to take this thing apart and improve it somewhat. So let's get started. We're going to be looking at more science experiments today, more essentially flights using the early film camera, and maybe even this biological sample capsule. That is 0.015, so is this one. This one just is linear, so we can put it on top of a rocket. Much easier than strapping these things to the sides. The cost is exactly the same, so we don't get any benefit from either way. And we're also maybe going to look at the ion mass spectrometer, which is tiny by comparison. Of course, the problem with all of these is that we can't easily recover them. We don't have a heat shield. So if we're going to try to recover them, and I do say try, we're going to have to not go fast enough that these will burn up. So how are we going to do that, or how are we going to try and do that? First of all, we're going to take this rocket apart, I think. And maybe later we'll think about upgrading the engines. So I just want to quickly cover the engines. We've been using this E04 engine. It's essentially the V2 rocket from World War II. And the Nazi Germany did have some planned upgrades to this. So if we go into the engine, we can purchase the A9. Now the A9 was, well, yes... bit of a crazy rocket, the A9. It was planned to be a successor to the A4 or the V2, whatever you want to call it. And it was planned to actually have a person inside of it. They figured out they weren't accurate enough to send this thing as obviously a missile to bomb people, because it was intended to be much longer range than the V2. So they planned to put a person inside the thing, and they would fly it in. So, yeah, you wouldn't want to be the pilot on that thing, would you? Not for very long, you wouldn't be anyway. Anyway, so yeah, you can purchase the A9 upgrade, even though it wasn't a real rocket. It was either in design phase or testing phase. It was never really used. But that is the upgrade to this, and that is called 30,000 funds, or $30 million if you want to think of them like that. You can do that. Alternatively, if you really want to go that way as well, you can go for these, the RD series. These are starting parts as well, so this isn't part of research or anything. You get them to start off with. These are 150, same cost as the A4. Basically, the Russians, like the Americans, really copied all the German designs from World War II. So they started off quite similar, and things diverged obviously later on. So if we wanted to go with those, we could just swap those for those for these. Obviously, it looks more like a traditional rocket engine, as you might imagine. Of course, you can go for this one as well. They're both equivalent as far as that's concerned. There we go. Not sure why there's a maneuver, a node up there for connection, but this one doesn't, so you can put that one in. And just like the A4 can be upgraded to the A9, so too can the RD100. There is a series of upgrades that are part of the research system. So if we right click on the engine, move it over here, and we go to the engine configuration, we can purchase the RD101 for 5,000, RD102 for 15. And of course, we don't have to go through multiple of these. We can skip the 101 and just go straight to 15. So this is half the cost of that A9 upgrade, which is significant when it's 15,000 of 143. Of course, it's not quite as good as the A9, but it is more legitimate. I think this is a real rocket engine as opposed to the A9, sort of planned version. So what we can do with that is look at the configurations. So if we have a look down here, the basic version, the RD100, here it is 70 seconds. That's just like the A4. And its upgrade, 101, is 85 seconds. The 102 is 83 seconds. But I suspect the difference between those will be in the thrust. Let's see if the thrust is listed anywhere. Yeah, here we are. So RD100. So its ISP is 203. And it starts off with 307 kilonewtons. And like many engines, they're unthrottleable. We'll come to unthrottleable in a minute. And then RD101 goes up to 404, 428. So they're becoming more powerful and just better rocket engines. So I think what I might do is shift across to the RD series because, yeah, they're more like the realistic progression. No puns. But also the Russian engines. So we'll maybe alternate between the two different types, the American sort of line and the Russian line, depending on what we have available to us. So if we're going to go for this, we may as well look at, first of all, changing the engine up to the RD102, and that is that money gone. Ouch. But we can shift back for no cost, and the RD102 will be 120 funds from then onwards, so not terribly expensive by comparison. Now remember that did allow us to burn for longer. I think it was 83 seconds, was it? 83, yes. So if we want this existing engine to burn for its full rated power, we're first of all going to have to get rid of the tanks and probably high pressure. Are you going to be okay with that? Yes. Are you okay with low pressure? I don't think you will be. Oh no, you're okay. Okay, well, we'll see. Let's leave it at high pressure for now. And then we can choose what we want. And I think this one is ethanol and liquid oxygen. Yep, there we go. So that's 2,291, but this is only 50 seconds, remember. The previous rocket engine was about 2,600-ish, the Delta V. But we need to burn this for longer. So this tank needs to be longer. And this is where we come into a bit of a situation that we have to watch the mass of this, because if you have a look there, it's 14 tons. Our current launch pad can only handle 20. So let's be a little bit careful and stretch this out as much as we can deal with. We want 83 seconds, so it might be best to go for a wider tank. So that's 67. 1 minute 15 is 75 seconds, so maybe 6 meters. That's close enough. Let's just go down a little bit. Okay, I'm leaving it that approximate because we're about to change all of this up here. So we're going to take this off as well. And now we're going to redesign the top stage. So to start off with, this is our avionics. It's the 10-ton avionics. We're already over our budget. So let's see what happens. If we reroute the part to be this being the base part, that means we can get rid of all of this top section. It can go away. And let's say this is a new variant. Let's call this the RB. In fact, it's not even an RB, is it? It's let's call this RD1, shall we? 102 tester. Okay. All right. So we're still 21 tons. So I don't think we're going to be able to take it off on the launch pad as is with this engine. Even though we've purchased it, we can. We just have to make sure we purchase the upgraded launch pad, which we'll go back to in a second and we'll start up. In the meantime, of course, we can reduce this tank size and still fly it. It just won't be able to, use the full rated power of the engine. So let's just get rid of all of you as well. And then let's look at what we can put on top of this, the payload. Here's our procedural decoupler. So whatever we put on top of that, it was going to get rid of. So let's just increase the diameter for a second, just because that's more suitable. Hopefully that doesn't increase the size of it too much. And then on top of this, we've got to figure out what we're going to put. So if we put a film camera and a biological return, we may even be able to get one of these on it somewhere. Let me just put that here for now. And then look at parachutes. Part of Realism Overhaul is to have real shoots. That's one of the mods. And in here, we're going to have to purchase some of this. So what we're actually looking for is not these ones. I mean, we can, they're just one, so we can always purchase them. But we want the real shoot versions. So that's going to pause for a second while it thinks about things. The real shoot versions are in here as well. There is a recovery pack for the Airbnb as well. I didn't notice that one. Here we go. So parachute stack, a double parachute. Parachute cone, again, double, and a single. And these are all real shoots. You can see, I think they're all real shoots. Yeah, from Real Shoot mod, there you go. And the radial. So what we could do is have a look at all of these. We can purchase them all, so that's not really a problem. It's going to pause for a second. Not sure what the cause of this pause is. That it's a bit of an issue with this current test version, I think. So that should be fine. And you can see it's quite large. So, given that it's a stack parachute, we could stack it But first of all, maybe let's look at this. So if we detach that for us, oops, we need to have a new pod on top first, a new root node. What we could do is, yeah, let's just move that off, rearrange this to be underneath in a second. Just move that off the top, and maybe this one off the top as well. Okay, so now we're going to have to attach everything to this avionics somehow. I need to make that a little bit larger. And will you let me attach? Why won't you let me attach? Is it only that one node? Does the film camera have to go on top? Maybe it does. Let's get rid of you for a second then. Let me just separate everything out. So this is going to be our pod. Our film camera can go on top of that. The biological return can go on top of that. And then we configure this on top, and then maybe this on the very top, maybe. I'm not quite so sure about that. That's far too small. It doesn't have an attachment point. And then we can put the decoupler underneath. Payload bay underneath that. If I get it to attach. There we go. And then, you know, we can figure out the rest of the rocket from there. We're now still 21.5 tons still. We have a rocket, it's ugly as sin. But we can rearrange all the actual sizes of these to suit it a little bit more. Now the reason I've rearranged this is because of the way RealShoot works. So we want to separate it to just what's going to be left at the end of our trip. And that's going to be these. So why don't we bring this size in a little bit. Diameter, let's just get it down to the size of the film camera return. Okay. And then everything above this is going to be left. Now, it's not going to be terribly stable, and that's going to be the main problem here. And when we have a heat shield underneath, like this kind of shape, it will naturally keep this way up as we go down. This may not do it as it is. However, before we do that, we're going to configure this parachute for this amount of weight. So if I'm going to put this on, I should probably do it now. And I think it's... how big is this? Is this really, really tiny? It's tiny. So we could just put 2 of them on just to keep everything nice and balanced so there's not much torque. And, you know, we want to keep the center of gravity low, so I guess I could put them... they'll burn off if I put them too far outside. I mean, this may even burn up. We'll see very shortly. So to configure the chute, you want to go to Actions and click on the chute. And we'll have some options here. We can configure the actions as you might in a regular game of KSP, but from here we can set what this is going to be. So let's change the size. We can do that in here. That looks good. We'll see if it can actually fit parachutes in for that. What we're going to need to do is set this up. It's currently set as a main chute with a single chute, that is. You know, a triple if you prefer. You know, if you've seen parachutes deploy like that from spacecraft. We're going to be using the dry mass. That's fine because there is no wet mass here, and we're going to basically deploy at a certain altitude in meters. So let's just actually bring this down. We're not sure how far this is going to go up, but let's say if you want to pre-deploy it at 3,000. Let's bring this down just in case we don't get very far up. I want to wait a little bit. 1,500. 1,500 for now. Yeah. That's in meters, by the way, so obviously roughly 3 times that in terms of feet. And am I just going to apply the settings? In fact, hang on, is that the... Yeah, that's the main shoot mode. So what's this section? I'm just going to apply the same thing. I need to read up more on that. Okay. Pre-deployment speed, and just click apply settings, and it succeeded. If you've chosen too small a parachute, it will come up at that point and say, hey, no, there's just no way I'm going to slow you down. So we'll use that. And what we probably want to do is figure out what we need, what we're going to need to do to arm this thing. We're going to set arm parachute to, let's say the number 1 key. arm parachute. Now this won't deploy the parachute, this will just set it up, and then when it passes 1500 meters, it will pre-deploy, and then 800 meters it will fully deploy. So it's automated, and that's important because if this burns up, I won't have any control over staging or activating or doing anything on this thing. So if we want to recover it, we kind of have to recover it on an automated fashion. We have to set this thing up ahead of time. All right, so let's put our rocket back on. And now we have this whole setup. What size is it? It's 21.3 tons. Still too heavy. So we're going to have to reduce this. We could take this back into being an A4 just for this mission. 20.4, and what's the A4? Let's just take this off for a second. 4,000. Ouch. Okay, most of that's the tank because it hasn't been tooled. So let's go to that subassembly again. Where are you, subassemblies? And A4 for stage. So handy to have subassemblies. And we can pop this back on. Is this still within range? It's 13 tons, and we are back up at 2,600 meters per second. Of course, we then need to put these on. So we're going to have to do that. And then we're going to have to change the size of those. So fairing auto shape on. Yeah, I think at some point I'm going to need to make this rocket a little bit wider so that it doesn't stick out a little bit on the fairings. But nonetheless, that works. We're now up at 13.487, and this is $2,000. Okay, let's take those off for a second, and then in here, we're going to say that this can control a bit more. We want more positive control. So we can increase the tonnage. And that is... let's have a look. So we're sort of balancing the actual size of this thing with the tonnage. So we want to bring that up to 13. What is the actual cost of that? 2.1. That's actually pretty cheap. 13.5. So let's just bring that up to 13.7, and that will do. Put you back. And we have a complete rocket again that should be under full control all the way. So let's just check our staging, which is the very last thing you should always do. First of all, rocket engine, then the launch clamps. Okay, so we're then going to have the fairing, the payload fairing. And then from then onwards, what do we then do? These two are going to have to be in one. So let's just create one for the parachute arming. And that's the separator sequence. And that should be done. So, this is 5,000. That's a lot. But a lot of it will be the tooling, won't it? So the tooling, yeah, it's that payload fairing. Huge amounts of cost for the payload fairing. Not much. Yeah, it's going to drop it by 1,400 credits, and drop another 300 credits for the decoupler once we change that. So that's something to think about. It's still going to be an expensive rocket by our comparison, however, so let's see how much it costs to simulate. Yep, still around 500. Let's go. Okay, so here we are on the launch pad, and let's just enable SAS and take off. There's our engine. There's our launch clamps, and we're now flying, and we can take photographs. So if I just look at this for a second, I will get 0.4 science if I recover this, but nothing if I transfer it. So I'm just going to reset that and not use it. Flying low over Earth shores. It's not terribly good as a return, is it? So we can use Smart ASS, which is part of MegJeb, or we can fly in Ascent. For the simulation, however, we're just going to make sure this thing actually works the way we want with all the staging. All the excitement should be when we're actually flying this thing. So what I'm just going to do is tip ourselves over, and we'll follow the usual thing that we can do of just sending it up and away from the launch pad, just a little bit further over. and we'll get up as far as we can. Now, of course, we don't have much fuel here. We haven't got that second stage. So what we've got to do is just get up and ideally as far out of the atmosphere as we can, and then we should be able to separate. So let's just take a look. Where are we at the moment? Our apoapsis is 50 kilometers. And if we have a look down, if I just bring down the vessel info, is it? Or is it the orbit info? Orbit info. There we go. So we'll be able to see it here without going to the map screen. 110, 130, 140. Good. So we're going to be going out of the atmosphere. At this point, we can lose the fairings. Yeah, we could wait till the Kármán line. That is one possibility. However, we now have 3 experiments, and we're hopefully going to be able to retain them. So let's just take a look at those. So if I bring back the biosample in the upper atmosphere, it's 3 science. That'll be good. That can get an entirely new node. Mass spectrometer, 0.8. Okay, so let's just reset those. And what I ideally want to do is wait till I'm past the Kármán line, which is going to happen very, very shortly. So let's just speed up things as they stand. Okay, so that's above the Kármán line, and we can separate now if we want to. There's not much in the thing we actually need to do. We want to make sure we're in space, and that's coming up very shortly. We'll see this change on the science here and now as soon as we change well, not biomes, as soon as we change the altitudes. Let's just increase the speed a little more. And there we go. So we're in space. What would we get from mass spectrometer? Requires a powered vessel. Have I run out of power? I have. So that's something we need to take into consideration. I was running SAS, I think, and that consumes power. So we're going to restart simulation, and I'm going to do that again. I'm going to do it off camera, though. I'll pay the money again, I think, if I restart the simulation. And I'm going to turn SAS off, and let's see if that runs into problems. It may just be the actual power usage rate of our avionics, and that's a problem, because I'm going to need to put a battery in that case. The battery will then increase the weight and reduce the actual height that we can go. So let's get that started. I'm just going to run that, and then I'll see you back once I've finished, just so I know what's going on. Okay, so the good news was it did let me use the experiments in time. The bad news is I got about 4 seconds. So we probably should think about a little bit of a battery. So let's go and do that. And why are you not weird? Weren't you different shape? Okay, if you're not a different shape, that's still fine with me, although I have to make sure that didn't get problematic. All right, I guess I don't have to change that tank, or at least not on this rocket. Maybe it was on the other rocket. Anyway, let's grab a battery. It's tiny by default, so let's take these off, even though I just put them back on. Take this off, and we're going to put the battery, it needs to be somewhere in fact, it's going to be heavy, isn't it? So we want it at the bottom of this. So let's just take all that off for a second. Put this on, and what's the diameter of this one? 1.2. Wow, that's a bit random. 1.2480. Okay, so this is 1.2480, and we want to bring down the size of it. There we go. How much charge is that going to give us? Electric charge is a huge amount, and it's going to be heavy, I assume. 100 dry, 17 and wet. There shouldn't be any difference between dry and wet on a battery. Charge doesn't weigh anything. Okay, anyway. I guess it's just because it has to be configured as a tank, I suppose. So, yeah, that is just strange. Its volume is fine, and it has electric charge that doesn't change no matter what I do. Okay. Let's actually just make it a thin battery, I guess. We'll think of it as a tank and maybe just increase it a little bit. Okay, that's 13 tons. Let's put this back on top. for now. And let's see how this performs. I think I'm just going to fly it rather than resimulate. So we're going to have to tool this thing. Let me just make sure that is in here. This is in the right place, and these are in the right place, and that's all saved. Then we want to just tool everything to make sure that cost is brought down. So that's going to be a significant cost to tooling the battery. Yeah, that's going to be a huge cost, in fact. What I may do is reduce the size of that battery, to be honest. I'll put it a little bit higher or something along those lines. In fact, let's just remove that, and if I just get to the battery and reduce its size, battery, let's just pin that. What happens if I reduce the length? That's its minimum, is it? Okay, if I bring its size down that way. Its minimum size is 1 meter? Can't be. It was less than that when I actually put it on. Oops, there we go. Okay, so it's down to 2,700. That's much more reasonable. And how much battery power do we get? So maybe even if I bring this down in terms of length a fair bit. Didn't make any difference. Oh, hang on, it did make a little bit of a difference, but not much. Yes, it's 271 untooled. Oh, I can spend 2,700 to make it tooled. Fine, let's put those back in. And we're going to make the parachute. In fact, we can make... it's a bit high up. But we could put it underneath the parachute. Doesn't have to be the exact size. Okay, that will do. And now we have to do all this again. Engine, clamps. Oh, it's all fine. Okay, so now we're going to need to tool each of these things. The decoupler, payload fairing. So let's do the payload fairings. Let's tool those. And then on the inside of this, we're going to grab the procedural battery. And we're going to tool that. And then the decoupler, which is in here somewhere. Take it off. Tool the decoupler base. And this is about as cheap as we can get it. It's still an expensive rocket, but it's better than it was. So 1,900, we can afford that. The main thing this rocket's going to get us is one, just a platform to launch in a few different directions to pick up some more science points. But also we're going to pick up those space science points first. We want all those experiments and we want them returned to Earth. That should give us at least 6 science. That means if we get them at the same expense we've already been getting them, that means 2 nodes. So let me just build a couple of these. 65 days though. Expensive. Let's take a look at what we could do with that science. I'm going to head over to the Research and Development Department. See what the boffins have got for us. It may be that I may only be able to spend on 1 node. I've got 1.4 at the moment. If I get 6 science, that will give me 7. So this is 10, 10, 7. Okay, so I can get early avionics and probes. Or, in fact, no, hang on. That has to go through the 10. Or does it? We'll see. And, in fact... yeah, it may actually be optional, so hopefully we can go straight through, unless that means it needs both of these. We'll see very shortly, but this one certainly doesn't. We can spend on this. It'll give us a magnetometer boom, so that is another science experiment. Micrometeorite detector, another science experiment. Television camera, and orbital perturbation experiment. More importantly, all of those are going to give us science. So if we want that kind of thing, we can get more science from that 1 node. There are others, of course. These are all 1956 and 1957 stuff. However, we're only in 1952, so we're ahead of the game if we take any of those. And these are much too expensive, to be fair. What will we get from these, though? We will get orbital rocketry with a lot of really expensive stuff. I know they're showing the incorrect cost there, I assume. Yeah, so we'll see what happens when that node unlocks. but that's a lot of the early different rockets that we can choose. So again, the more RD100 upgrades are in there, and this one is 7 as well. So I almost want the science because we can unlock more science, more upgrade points that way. That's probably the best way to go. There are solid rocket motors, and this is in this node. Now, one of the early ways of getting into orbit, I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, is solid motors like this. And the Baby Sergeant is probably one of the most famous if you've played KSP, and that's composed of a sort of probe body at the very top, and then there's a group of, I think it's 1, then it's 3, yeah, then it's 11. Is there an 8? I don't think there's an 8. So it's 1, 3, 11, and they all stack inside each other. So each set fires, launches the next set, launches the next set, and it's all just lots and lots of these strapped together. It's an interesting rocket to go for, so maybe we'll do that, but solid rocket motors, it's much more exciting building your own liquid fueled motors. So let's go and fly that mission then, and let's go and see what we can do. So let's go to the launch pad. And I'm going to move the Area B down. It's only 5% done, but that was another one of the Area B's duplicate for the 3Bs. And we're going to run the RD102 tester. Let's first of all recondition the launch pad, and let's see if I've got any technology coming up. Basic rocketry is 206 days, and we're in 1952 in November. So well, let's get to this first RD102. And we're going to roll it out. It's going to take 3 days to roll out. All right. And I will see you on the launch pad. That's not the launch pad. I misclicked. Leave me alone. I'll see you on the launch pad. Okay, here we are. And we're going to get started right away and launch because our charge is already moving down. That's actually the avionics that's using the power. So instead of about 700, we instead have 2900, which is good. And I'm just going to turn off the SAS. That may save a bit of power, hopefully it would. But at the same time, it's still going to continue going down. That should be more than enough, however, to get all the experiments done. We're going to completely ignore this. What we're going to do for this starter sort of mission, just for science, is just go straight up. We're not going to go up towards suborbital and turn over and stuff like that just yet. We're just interested in getting the science. So we're going to be going up through the atmosphere. And once we get to the top, we can just get to the very peak, the apoapsis, and then take as much science as we can and come straight back down. And again, because we're not going at orbital speeds, we shouldn't need the heat shield. The very fact we have that film camera body should slow us down more than enough. So we're going up through 25, 26. What our fuel isn't going to last much longer. That doesn't really matter as far as this is concerned. And it should cut out. There goes our motor, our rocket. And we're going to go up a little bit further. Flying high now. Still okay, we've got plenty of electric charge. We're going to lose the fairings. Doesn't really much matter at this point, other than being able to see everything. We're getting up towards the Kármán line. Normally I'd wait till around the Kármán line to lose the fairings on Earth when we're going towards orbital velocity, but we're not going fast enough here. So let's just get rid of them. And off they go. Separation. And as we zoom in, obviously you can see the film camera body. We're going to carry on going up, and our apoapsis is 210 kilometers. So let's just increase time a little bit till we hit space, and that's all we're waiting for, around 135 or so? 140? 140. So we're in space, slow back down to normal time, and then we're just going to take all the experiments we can, and we're going to recover them all. Keep, keep, keep. And that's everything. Now at this point, we can lose the rest of the rocket. Vaporing feed line shut down, yes it is. And I guess we're pushing ourselves up a little bit more by that, but that's not really the point. The point here was we're not spinning, we're not tumbling, we just hope to go straight up and straight back down again. So let's just accelerate time. And I'm going to press 1 first of all, because if we run out of charge, I won't be able to arm the parachute. So I've armed it by pressing 1, it's gone blue. And then we can accelerate time. And let's head back down to, well, going high. I guess we can actually click this again, because remember I put 2 of these mass spectrometers on, so we can collect another 0.8, and that's pretty much everything we've got. And our rocket's going to continue, well, the remaining parts of our rocket are continuing to fall. We'll speed up time until we get into the atmosphere. That won't take very long at all. And we're starting to head to the area now. If you look at the ball at the very bottom, we're not using SAS because we don't really have any way of controlling ourselves. We don't have any reaction control wheels like regular KSP. We don't have any reaction control system. And we don't have a rocket. So there's no way for us to control this now. And that's absolutely fine. It's what we're expecting. You see it's going to start oscillating around its sort of velocity vector, where it's coming straight down. That's just because the air passing around the outside. Oh, and there's our space center. We're not going to hit that. It looks like it's nowhere near the coast. That's just because everything's stretched out. So you get some issues with textures when you get up close in RealismOverhaul. But that's a just a consequence of the whole thing. So let's just speed up till we get to that 1500 meters mark. You'll see it's rocking from side to side, but our surface speed is slowing right down, and we should get the parachute deployment. Let's just keep going. And cutting to a little bit further down in the flight, let's just speed up things again. Still rocket power turn forwards. Can speed up all the way down towards 1500. Here it comes. And there's our first deployment, or the pre-deployment stage. And you see our speed's dropped down to 80. And then when it hits 500, oh no, hang on, it's already deployed. I set to 800, didn't I, rather than 500. So yeah, the second the deployment's happened, we're down to 4.4 meters per second, and that's more than enough for this to be slow enough to survive. And our launch pad's way over there in the distance. But as you can see, as we get lower, this is Florida, so I guess in RealismOverhaul, it's mostly sunk. Anyway, let's get down to the ground, and we should get to the space center. Can we get down to the ground quickly enough? Yeah, sort of. See our shadow getting towards the ground here, getting a bit clearer and clearer still. And that's pretty much it. Our first successful return without complete destruction of the rocket. And here we go. Our altitude above sea level is about 180 meters, looks like. Not sure what that's actually like for Florida, but we've got this going, and we can recover the vessel for the first time. More importantly, that should give us a bunch of, well, not funds, but certainly a bunch of science. Let's see what it says. All right then, so we've got quite a lot more than I was expecting actually. So we get 5 science for recovering the vessel. I forgot about that entirely. So yeah, recovery of a vessel after a suborbital flight, 4.8 science. And then we have 2 mass spectrometers. One's worth a little bit more because it's from space. And we have photography and biological samples. So we've got 13. Our funds, we got 1,000 for recovering the parts. Part of this mod pack is stage recovery. So later on, we'll be trying to do the SpaceX thing, perhaps. Or maybe the Lazy Man's version, which is just strapping lots and lots of parachutes onto something. That doesn't really result in a dual landing rocket of Falcon Heavy or anything. But, we don't have the tools and the money that Elon Musk has. Sad face. Anyway, we've got 13 science, or 13.7. So I think I'm going to take that, definitely going to take that satellite era science node. And it looks like this one, yep, because we did have enough for this one. We don't have any more at 6.7. This will give us another upgrade point. And once it's researched, we should have those more of those experiments. And then, well, we're going to have to go for these nodes because it's not going to let us get to these until we've gone through these ones. So there's material science and electrics. Electronic research gives us our first solar panel. But those are kind of only really useful once you get into orbital stuff. So we're going to have to get to orbital stuff. Material science, just lots of different tanks and adapters and the balloon tank type. So you can change that just from high pressure or regular pressure. And then, of course, everything else in the tree that we can get to. We're going to have to go through these 2 nodes. So we're going to have to get above 10 science. And that's probably me I think I'm going to do this between the episodes. I'm going to use our existing science or potentially this Skagamolga counter when it comes up. And because we now have a few rockets that we've got tooling on, it means that essentially they're cheaper. So we just want to change out those experiments on the very top of the rockets to the ones we have and send them in different directions. And that's pretty much a good early way of getting as much science as you can. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We've, again, created another new rocket, although we're still using that A4 assembly for the bottom. We'll probably switch over to the RD series pretty soon. I need to upgrade the launch pad to do that, of course. So I'm going to have to do some more missions, get it up around 50,000 funds, maybe over the top of 100k. We'll see what I can actually raise there and start the upgrade of the launch pad. At that point, we can switch to the RD100s, or indeed the A9 if you wanted to. And you will have a rocket that's over 20 tons, but at the same time, you'll have a launch pad able to take it. So I hope you'll join me for the next episode. Feel free to give it a thumbs up if you haven't already, or subscribe and share. You can follow me on Twitter at Gradaster, of course. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, as always, for watching.